If you told me the first thing I'd see on location in Greenville, North Carolina was an old caboose, I wouldn't have been too surprised. If you told me that caboose wore the tattered colors of the British Columbia Railway, I would have fallen out of the chair I wrote this in. I'm in town today for the Carolina Coastal Railway, and figured the sunny field overlooking the BC Rail caboose made for an excellent kickoff to what I knew was going to be an amazing day trackside. I have absolutely no idea how, why, or when this foreigner was forgotten on the siding, but didn't have much time to speculate as weekday train 120 showed up only a few minutes after I did. Today's lash-up was a cool one, with both of CLNA's uniquely painted engines providing the power. The belle of the ball was trailing GP15-1 number 1501, painted in a heritage scheme honoring the original Norfolk Southern Railway to which CLNA traces their roots. Having wanted to see 1501 for months, and with this day free to do so, I took my chances on the Carolina Coastal, knowing that the reliable Train 120 was my best bet. The crew was bringing a good-sized train east from Wilson, waking up the college town of Greenville. If you're paying close attention, it might have just sounded like I put on an accent, but North Carolina has some funkily pronounced towns. Fayetteville is at the center of it all on CSX's A-line, situated about an hour north of Whiteville, marking an R.J. Corman dead end. An hour east of Fayetteville is Clennon, where my grandparents built a house and enjoyed rail service for their business on what is today CSX's W&W subdivision. The W&W hooks up with the A-line in Wilson, our train's origin and destination today, as it passes through Greenville. That is, unless you know what you're talking about, in which case it's Greenville. While in town, 120 will swap traffic at the CSX interchange and continue towards an NS interchange at the turning point in Chocowinity, where some cargo will be swapped with another CLNA local. The eastbound CSX interchange took place quite quickly as the engines shoved their train over the East Carolina University-inspired bridge in downtown Greenville. It's a college town, and one of a very few places where you can capture regular short-line service adjacent to a D1 football stadium. As if the locale isn't obvious enough, the Grady White Boats athletic campus backs right up to the original Norfolk Southern main line, with the Pirates football stadium towering over the tracks. After exchanging the covered hopper on the head end for a different one, Train 120 is back underway as its two Jeeps work to get their train moving up what is roughly a 0.6% grade. The 1501 looked stunning, and with 3 gondolas and 18 hoppers full of rock, put on a really good show. Our leader this morning is GP38-2, number 2177, serving under its third owner at 55 years of age. Originally built for the Southern in 1969, it's doing D.W. Brosnan justice today by running long hood forward. Catching back up to the train on the east side of Simpson, the two engines can stretch their legs a bit as they continue the hustle towards Chocowinity. This would make for my second chase along the Carolina coastal, an embarrassing number considering the proximity in which I've lived for nearly 6 years. I learned from experience back in 2020 that 120 will spin its power in Choco for the trip back to Wilson, meaning the same engine would be leading in both directions. While all of CLNA's engines are desirable, this can be a blessing or a curse, and I must admit I was a little bummed that 2177 would be LHF all day, or so I thought. It certainly wasn't the end of the world, and my spirits were quickly lifted as the two very noisy engines rocketed out of a slow order just 4 miles farther in the town of Grimesland. The sound of hard-working engines is enough to make any outing a good one, and a good one it was here on the CLNA. 120 was putting me to the test, however, as the 22-car train was just barely going slower than I was. Thankfully, the Carolina coastal is riddled with slow sections of track, and I had about 6 minutes advantage in Chocowinity. The town is as far as 120 will go, as the crew eases by Mill Road, preparing to work the 4-track yard. Owned by Regional Rail Incorporated, the CLNA is one of 16 unique short lines that make up the portfolio. Unlike many other modern conglomerates, Regional Rail encourages diversity within its short lines, with no corporate paint scheme, but rather individual designs that reflect the heritage and locale of each railroad. This practice was originally put into fruition on the CLNA by painting the locomotives in a red and blue scheme, representing the colors of NC State and Chapel Hill. Regional Rail leadership has recently taken things a step further, however, exemplified by the newly acquired 1501 painted in the stunning scheme of the original Norfolk Southern Railway, whose tracks make up the majority of CLNA's system. It's so cool to see a holding company not only embrace but appreciate their heritage and what makes each railroad unique, further solidifying Regional Rail as an awesome company in my book. Not to mention their widespread success, acquiring short lines at an impressively quick speed, faster than I can keep up with for sure. Entering the Chocowinity yard is done so by swinging north on the adjacent Y, pulling past the switches and shoving in towards the south. The work here is quick, shoving the inbound block in and pulling the outbounds back out. While the local crews based out of Choco handle switching for each other, 120 today will take cars off NS and CLNA and bring them to the CSX interchanges in Greenville or Wilson. 119 runs from Choco to the far reaches of CLNA along the Pamlico Basin, while NS hosts a series of tandem locals between Chocowinity, New Bern, Selma, and Morehead City. The Class 1 operates this area like a Shortline would, with their locals making up what is referred to as their Eastern Carolina Business Unit. NS has always been pro-Shortline, and to see them put it into practice on their own network is even cooler. But that's not what I was here for today, and I was quickly reminded that as my subject yanked its outbound cut from the yard. For efficiency's sake, a normal day on the CLNA would see 120 shove its westbound train to the south end of the Y and run back to Wilson. This eliminates the need to run around the consist and keeps the crew in the same engine all day, which can prove tedious to rail fans should one not be happy with the lead engine's paint or orientation. Like I said, the Shortline spins their train on a normal day. This practice doesn't account for the uncertain, like whenever the only NS in Choco fails during yard duties and blocks the Y in the process. While the Norfolk Southern crews probably weren't too pleased, I couldn't have been happier. This meant that 120 was forced to run around their train on a nearby pass track, and that the lash-up would not be spun. The process began by shoving the westbound train into the runaround track. Sometimes luck is too good, and you don't quite believe it to be true until it is. I didn't want to get my hopes up, but knew them to be true once I found 1501 running around its train back at Mill Road. During my eastbound chase of 120, I had been weighing my options, thinking that 2177 was to lead west, long hood forward. I was pretty close to parting ways with 120 in favor of 119, NS, or the drive home, but made the right call for once and decided to stick around. I was beyond happy that NS's misfortune had worked in my favor, and will remember this day the next time I start to second-guess things. The 1501 looks incredible as the crew nudges their way up to the crossing, preparing to shove onto their westbound train for the return trip. If the CLNA logo looks familiar, that's because it is. Further bolstering Regional Rail's heritage-happy ideology, the Carolina Coastal has recently adapted their logo to reflect that of the original NS. It looks amazing on the red, black, and yellow GP15-1, which began life on the Missouri Pacific in 1977. It may seem like I'm blowing Regional Rail out of proportion, but I'm not. With their acquisition of my hometown Shortline, Florida Central, they have painted 2 more GP15s into a Seaboard Coastline black and gold scheme, with plans to continue dipping new locomotives in heritage schemes of their host railroads. I cannot wait to see what the company's future holds, but for now was just as happy to be watching 1501 begin the westbound journey with just as healthy a train as the eastbound. A reliable customer on Train 120 is the block of open-top hoppers, which I believe come out of Heidelberg Materials in Morehead City off the Norfolk Southern. These cars have their contents dumped in MHC for use in local construction, run up to Chocowinity by way of 2 ECBU locals, take the CLNA into Wilson, and then CSX for the long haul. It's neat to see a Shortline doing what they do best, providing much-needed dual Class 1 service to customers that are otherwise landlocked. You'll also notice the hopper that got picked up in Greenville, which means it will be dropped at an online customer on the run west. Back again at Grimesland, as the 2 Jeeps have easily achieved track speed. From Grimesland, I really wanted to get another field shot east of Simpson, although a slow-moving school bus meant I only had seconds to set up. While not exactly what I had in mind, I was chasing 1501 and therefore quite happy. I also knew that track speed is favorable between Simpson and Greenville, affording me plenty of time to get to a location I'd been itching for since my last visit 3.5 years prior. East of downtown Greenville, the original NS cuts through the Brook Valley Country Club holes number 1 and 2, making for an incredible shot whether you're golfing or train chasing. Just beyond thrilled, I was going for quality over quantity with the 1501. That said, Greenville is a slow and tricky town to navigate, and I decided to play it safe in Farmville. I had thought the train may work a transload customer between the country club and here, but didn't want to lose track of 120 should that be the case. Just when I was beginning to think I did, however, the crossing gates quickly let me know otherwise. Although the train's speed doesn't show it, 120 was about to work the Southern States grain elevator just 1,500 feet behind me. Swapping an inbound tank for an outbound, and 3 covered hoppers for 4 more was an impressively quick undertaking for the crew, and I used what little time I had to set up in just about the middle of nowhere near a community called Appy. I had never chased the railroad west of Greenville and found out for myself how unforgiving the farmland roads are to the unsuspecting railfan. Contrary to the norm, none of these roads parallel the tracks but zigzag their way across them, leaving me with just enough time to squeal into my final spot for the day. I'm only about 5.5 miles out from Wilson and couldn't resist ending the day with a bang as seen from the drone. Thanks for railfanning with me today. I hope you enjoyed chasing some incredible Carolina Shortline heritage as much as I did.